Ireland will vote tonight on contentious abortion legislation. The Irish government has put forward a bill to try to give clarity to the law after a woman died in hospital after being refused an abortion.
But the Catholic Church and many campaign groups have been involved in a very public fight against the Irish government and that new legislation. With more, here's our Ireland correspondent Chris Buckler.
Abortion is an extremely emotive subject, particularly in Ireland. Tens of thousands of pro-life campaigners marched in Dublin at the weekend, hoping to influence politicians. Today, they'll take part in a final vote on new legislation to clarify when an abortion can be carried out in Ireland. Already, there have been heated debates in the Irish Parliament, the Dáil, and pressure put on the country's Prime Minister.
I am now being branded by personnel around the country as being a murderer, but I'm going to have on my soul the death of 20 million babies.
The death of Savita Hallam-Panavar made clarifying the law a priority. She was admitted to hospital in Galway, miscarrying and seriously ill. She died there days later, having been refused an abortion. Her family claimed that medical staff were confused about the exact legal position. More than 2 decades ago, Ireland's Supreme Court ruled that if there was a real and substantial risk to a mother's life, an abortion could be carried out. But campaigners are concerned by the government's attempts to put that into legislation.
It's a very complex, a very divisive, a very sensitive topic which has divided family, community and political party.
Even if the bill is passed, abortion will still be very tightly controlled in Ireland. But legislating for it in any circumstances is simply too much for some. Chris Buckler, BBC News.
Well, Sarah Malone from the Abortion Rights Campaign is in Dublin, and Sarah de Nordwall from Catholic Voices joins us in the studio. Good morning to both of you. Well, Sarah Malone, if I can start with you in Dublin. Let's get your reaction to this, first of all, the stage where we are now.
Well, how would you my reaction to the Protection of Life During Pregnancy bill at the moment?
Yes, do give us that, please.
Yeah, well, obviously that's a very essential piece of legislation. Doctors need to have the clarity to know that they can act in their patient's best interest to save her life, even if she's pregnant and regardless of the stage of pregnancy that she's at. And I know that the legislation is very divisive in Irish society, and I think part of that is because of the large amount of misinformation that's been happening about it in the country. There's been allegations that it will allow for abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, when that simply isn't the case. It applies only if abortion is the only way to save a woman's life. So if it's very late in pregnancy, they would deliver her child early rather than perform an abortion. So I don't understand the reaction as if it's a very, very broad piece of legislation when it isn't. It's very restrictive. It will only provide for an abortion if a woman will die if she doesn't receive one. So I do not understand why anybody would be opposed to the legislation.
Well, let's talk to somebody who is. Sarah de Nordwall, you're from Catholic Voices.
That's right, yes.
You say that this isn't just clarification, you're saying it's a departure and it goes in the wrong direction.
Absolutely, it goes way beyond what's needed. In fact, the law already is perfectly clear that doctors are absolutely obliged to fight for the life of the mother equally with the life of the child. And what we believe is that what this is doing is bringing about a fundamental shift actually in Irish law. It's non-constitutional. The Irish people don't want it. 3 referendums have shown that they don't want it. And in fact what it will do is open the door to make abortion actually legal. And it was very interesting that quite recently Lord David Steele, who was the architect of our legislation in 1967, which brought in abortion for very hard cases. What people don't realise is abortion is illegal in this country except for hard cases. But we can all see that we now have an expectation that we can have abortion when we want it. It becomes a right. And he said very recently in the House of Lords, "I wish I'd never done it." And that's why we're very keen that Ireland doesn't go down a path that's not necessary to women and that doesn't respect the right to life, which is the fundamental human right.
The fact that Ireland is changing its law significantly or just clarifying it is up for debate, but do you think that means that overall you're losing the argument here?
I don't think we've lost the argument. I think the democratic process is not being respected in Ireland. The argument has definitely not been lost. You saw from the rally that happened recently in Dublin, 35,000 people came out on the streets. Ireland doesn't want this. Women don't want this. Women don't need this. And a story recently of Savita has been manipulated to try and arouse feeling that really isn't there. This is a political move by, you know, by a party that really is looking for something to do. The economic situation is a disaster. They need to look like they're doing something that appeals to some people, but it's not necessary to help women, and it certainly won't help unborn children.
OK, Sarah Malone, people in Ireland don't want this, is what we're hearing here.
That's absolutely untrue. The two referenda we had were to repeal suicide as a grounds for abortion, and the Irish people voted not to exclude that as grounds, and we also granted women the right to travel for an abortion and the right to information on abortion that's legal in other countries. And as for people not wanting this, several tens of thousands of people may have marched, but that's nothing compared to the 150,000 Irish women that have travelled to England to access abortion services there since 1980. That's a massive amount of women who have voted with their feet and gone to get the medical care that they need. So this is democratic. We have voted twice on this issue, and our legislators have an obligation after a judgment from the European Court of Human Rights to clarify this law, to let women know when practically they're able to access abortions that they're entitled to under our constitution.
And Sarah Malone, you're saying clarify the law, but you see this as very much a first step, don't you? You want the law to go further in time.
Well, of course, the abortion rights campaign is in favour of free, safe and legal abortion when a woman believes it would be in her best interests. But that is impossible. It's not like the British Abortion Act in the way that in our constitution we have an amendment that protects the right to life of the unborn as equal to the right to life of the mother. So our legislation cannot become any more liberal without a democratic referendum to remove that amendment. So I don't think that the worry of it becoming abortion on demand, as people like to call it, is a realistic worry, unless the Irish people, the Irish electorate, vote and decide that that is what they would like. And I genuinely don't believe that the majority of Irish people want to see survivors of rape, women whose pregnancies can't survive outside the womb, women whose health will be permanently damaged by their pregnancy, travelling for abortion. And numerous polls have shown this.
Okay.
I would be largely in favour of a referendum on this amendment, and with real options for the Irish people to see what we would like to do moving forward.
We believe that Ireland and Chile, the two countries that don't have abortion, have the best maternal care health records. Irish maternal care record is twice as good as the English one. The Irish people don't want this, and the right to life is the most fundamental human right, and it needs protecting.
OK, we're going to have to leave that. It's always a divisive subject and a complicated subject, but thank you both very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.